The deadliest dangers often hide behind familiar smiles. For 17-year-old Talia Reyes, this truth arrived as a devastating revelation. Her boyfriend hadn't simply disappeared. He was murdered by the very people who should have protected him most, his own family. Blood isn't always thicker than water. Sometimes, it's the source of the most calculated betrayal. When Talia discovered she was pregnant, she and Darian Ortiz dreamed of building a life together away from his controlling family. But their plans shattered one autumn night when Darian vanished after their secret meeting. The police called it an accident, a tragic car crash on a deserted road. Yet something didn't add up. A cryptic message, a hidden journal, whispered confessions from those who feared the powerful Ortiz family. As the evidence mounted, Talia faced an unbearable truth. The wealthy, respected Ortiz family had systematically eliminated their own son rather than allow him to escape their influence with his pregnant girlfriend. Have you ever discovered someone you trusted was living a double life? That moment when inconsistencies begin to form a pattern too deliberate to ignore? Or perhaps you felt that chill of recognition when you realize someone close to you isn't who they claim to be. For Talia, these questions weren't hypothetical. They were the first steps on a dangerous path toward justice for the father of her unborn child. Today, we'll walk through her journey from a frightened, pregnant teenager to a determined force who brought down one of the most influential families in her community. Her story reveals how far some will go to protect reputation, wealth, and control, even if it means sacrificing their own blood. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe to Mr. Body Crime for more powerful true crime stories that illuminate the darker aspects of human nature and the extraordinary courage of those who stand against it. Hit that subscribe button now. Trust me, what happened to Talia and Darian will change how you think about family loyalty forever. Talia Reyes grew up in the weathered apartments on the east side of town, where peeling paint and determined potted plants told stories of persistence amid hardship. At 17, she possessed a maturity born from necessity. Her mother, Lucia, worked double shifts at the local hospital, leaving Talia to manage household responsibilities from an early age. Their tight-knit bond was forged through shared struggles, late-night budget planning at the kitchen table, celebrating small victories like making rent on time, and the understanding that education was Talia's ticket to a different future. Despite her circumstances, Talia maintained excellent grades and dreamed of becoming a nurse. Her pragmatic outlook on life left little room for teenage rebellion, until she met Darian Ortiz in chemistry class. Darian belonged to a different world entirely. The Ortiz name adorned the town's largest financial institution and several charitable foundations. Their sprawling estate, with its manicured gardens and stone walls, stood as a physical barrier between the family and the community they supposedly served. While other wealthy families flaunted their status, the Ortiz clan maintained a calculated distance, appearing only at select events where their presence could reinforce their influence. What began as a laboratory partnership quickly evolved into stolen glances and passed notes. Darian wasn't like the other privileged teens who treated school as an inconvenience. His quiet intensity matched Talia's own determination. Behind his reserved exterior lived a young man suffocating under the weight of expectations. "My father plans my future like he's arranging chess pieces," Darian confided during one of their first meetings at the lakeside park that became their sanctuary. Every decision, from university choice to potential marriage partners, serves the family's ambitions. Their romance blossomed in borrowed moments. Midnight motorcycle rides to the abandoned observation point overlooking the city, hushed phone calls after his family retired for the evening, and carefully orchestrated study sessions that gave them precious hours together. "We'll leave after graduation" became their shared mantra. Darian spoke of a coastal town where nobody knew the Ortiz name, where they could simply be two young people in love rather than a forbidden scandal waiting to explode. The pregnancy test changed everything. Two pink lines transformed their someday dreams into urgent plans. Talia, hands shaking as she showed Darian the test, expected panic or anger. Instead, he held her with surprising calm. This changes our timeline, not our destination, he promised. What Talia didn't fully grasp then was the depth of control the Ortiz family maintained over their son. Appearances meant everything to Corbin and Isadora Ortiz. Their reputation had been cultivated across generations, their business dealings and community standing protected through calculated manipulation and, when necessary, ruthless elimination of threats. To them, family wasn't about unconditional love, but unwavering loyalty to the Ortiz name. Children were extensions of the legacy, not individuals with their own dreams. Darian's previous minor rebellions, choosing different college courses, befriending unsuitable classmates, have been swiftly corrected through methods ranging from psychological pressure to outright threats. A pregnant girlfriend from Modest Means wasn't merely disappointing. It was an existential threat to everything the Ortiz family had built. As Darian began secretly transferring money to a separate account and researching apartments in coastal towns, he unknowingly triggered invisible alarms within his family's surveillance system. Their love story was heading toward a collision with forces Talia couldn't yet comprehend. Forces that viewed Darian not as a beloved son, but as property that had dared to claim independence. October 17th began like any other secret rendezvous. Talia waited at their usual spot, the weathered gazebo overlooking the lake, hidden enough from main paths to avoid recognition. The autumn air carried a sharp chill that night, forcing her to pull her jacket tighter as minutes turned to hours. No texts, no calls, just the steady rhythm of crickets and distant traffic. By midnight, what started as annoyance had transformed into gnawing dread. Darian was meticulously punctual, a habit ingrained by his father's rigid expectations. Missing their meeting was unprecedented, especially after he'd emphasized having important news to share. Talia called his private phone repeatedly. Each attempt reached the same automated voicemail. She finally returned home at 2 a.m., exhausted and uneasy. The morning news hit like a physical blow, a car crash on Route 16. The vehicle, a silver BMW registered to the Ortiz family. The official report claimed the driver had lost control on a sharp curve, plunging into the ravine below. The body, though badly damaged, was identified as Darian Ortiz. "It doesn't make sense," Talia whispered to her mother through tears. "That road isn't even near our meeting place." But grief temporarily overpowered her questions. 3 days later, a text arrived from an unknown number. "Some secrets are buried deep. The truth will find you." Talia stared at her phone, heart hammering against her ribs. Who knew about them? Who was reaching out? When she attempted to file a report with the police about the suspicious message, Officer Jensen scarcely looked up from his desk. "Miss, the Ortiz boy's death was thoroughly investigated. The medical examiner confirmed it was accidental, likely fatigue or possibly alcohol, though the family requested that detail remain private. But he never drank," Talia protested. "And this message, look," Jensen interrupted, lowering his voice. "The Ortiz family funds half the department's community programs. They're grieving. Don't complicate things with conspiracy theories based on prank texts." She left the station with the distinct impression that the official narrative was not merely accepted but protected. That evening, Talia sat cross-legged on her bed, the last photo they'd taken together illuminated on her phone screen. They'd been at the county fair, Darian wearing a baseball cap as a minimal disguise. His smile appeared genuine, but his eyes held something she hadn't noticed before. A wariness, a shadow of fear. Her hand drifted to her stomach, still flat, but carrying their future within. "I'll find what happened," she promised both her unborn child and Darian's memory. "Something isn't right, and I won't stop until I know the truth." She created a dedicated notebook, starting with everything she knew about Darian, his family, and the inconsistencies surrounding his death. The route he allegedly took made no geographical sense for their meeting location. The damaged car prevented open casket services. The hasty cremation eliminated any possibility of future examination. Each detail alone could be explained. Together, they formed a pattern that demanded investigation, a pattern leading directly to the doorstep of the formidable Ortiz family. Talia approached her search for answers like a research project, methodical, thorough, and driven by an urgency that grew alongside her barely visible pregnancy. She started with Darian's daily routines, mapping locations he frequented beyond school and their secret meeting spots. Her first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The local diner, where Darian occasionally stopped for coffee, had a waitress named Elena who remembered him clearly. He came in twice a week, always ordered the same thing, black coffee and wheat toast, Elena recalled. But he wasn't alone that last week. He met with an older guy, short, stocky, work clothes. They argued in hushed tones. This description led Talia to Marcos Vega, a former mechanic who had worked for the Ortiz family for nearly a decade before being abruptly dismissed 3 months prior. Finding him proved challenging. He'd moved to a small apartment across town and seemed reluctant to discuss his former employers. "I signed confidentiality agreements," he explained when Talia finally tracked him down at his new workplace. But something in her persistent questions and obvious grief broke through his caution. "Look, I can't tell you specifics," Marcos said, glancing around the empty parking lot. But Darian was scared those last few weeks. He asked me about camera blind spots on the property, about which family members had access to vehicle tracking systems. Marcos hesitated, then added, "Check the old boathouse by Miller's Creek." He kept things there, things he didn't want found. The boathouse stood weathered and abandoned, a forgotten relic from when the creek had been deep enough for small watercraft. The padlock looked new, incongruously shiny against the faded wood. Talia's hands trembled as she tried the combination she and Darian had used for everything. 0317, the date they first met. The lock clicked open. Inside, hidden beneath loosened floorboards, Talia discovered a waterproof container holding Darian's private journal, a USB drive, and several files documenting the Ortiz family businesses. The journal revealed a young man increasingly aware of his family's darker activities, suspicious financial transactions, threats against business rivals, and ruthless control tactics used against anyone who challenged their authority. One entry from just 2 weeks before his death sent ice through Talia's veins. "Father received the report about tea today. I overheard him telling Mother that the situation requires immediate intervention. They don't know about the baby yet, but they're having me followed. I'm accelerating our plans. The transfer to the coastal account is complete. If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. The proof is in the family vault, 3rd drawer, behind Mother's jewelry case." Talia closed the journal, her heart pounding. This wasn't just about family disapproval of their relationship. Darian had discovered something dangerous about his family's operations, something that made him a liability once he planned to leave. Her search expanded, identifying others who might possess pieces of this dark puzzle. The Ortiz family's former housekeeper, Ms. Karina, reluctantly confirmed that strange meetings had occurred the week of Darian's death. The family driver mentioned unusual late-night trips. Each conversation revealed fragments of a truth the official investigation had deliberately ignored. The revelation struck her with the force of absolute clarity. Darian hadn't died in an accident. His own family had silenced him permanently rather than risk their secrets becoming public, especially with a grandchild on the way who might eventually inherit their wealth and position. If this story has captivated your attention, hit the like button right now. What do you think really happened that night? Was it a calculated move by the entire family, or was one specific family member behind Darian's death? Share your theories in the comments section below. Your insights might reveal perspectives I haven't considered as we continue this journey into a family's darkest choices. Finding Rodrigo Ortiz proved almost impossible. As Darian's cousin and the black sheep of the extended family, he had distanced himself from the Ortiz empire years ago. Talia located him through social media, a photography account with no personal information but landscapes she recognized from Darian's descriptions of places he and his cousin had explored together. After weeks of careful messages, Rodrigo agreed to meet at an abandoned train yard outside town limits. He arrived nervous, constantly scanning their surroundings. "I shouldn't be here. were his first words. They watch everyone connected to the family. Who's they? Talia asked. Corbin's security team. My uncle doesn't trust anyone, not even family. Rodrigo's hands trembled as he lit a cigarette. Especially not family. When Talia mentioned Darian's journal and the evidence she'd gathered, Rodrigo's facade cracked. You have no idea what you're walking into, he warned. The accident wasn't an accident. I've been waiting for someone to figure out. The truth emerged in painful fragments. According to Rodrigo, the Ortiz family wealth came not just from legitimate banking and real estate, but from decades of money laundering for certain political figures and criminal organizations. Darian had accidentally discovered financial records while using his father's computer for a school project. At first, he thought it was just tax evasion, Rodrigo explained. But he kept digging. He found connections to disappeared journalists, rivals who suffered mysterious accidents, judges who suddenly changed rulings after private meetings with Corbin. Darian had collected evidence for months, storing duplicates in various locations, including with Rodrigo. His plan was simple: secure Talia's safety, expose his family's crimes, and build a new life far from their influence. The night he died, he called me, Rodrigo said, voice barely above a whisper. He confronted his father with what he knew, thinking his status as the only son would protect him. It was a miscalculation. That night, Darian was summoned to the family estate for what was presented as a discussion about his future. Instead, he walked into an ambush. Corbin, Isadora, and the family's head of security were waiting. They presented him with photos of Talia, her mother, her workplace, evidence they'd been monitoring her for weeks. The choice was framed as protection, Rodrigo continued. Either Darian abandoned his plans to expose the family and ended his relationship with you, or your safety couldn't be guaranteed. When he refused to back down and revealed your pregnancy, it crossed the final line. Darian never left the estate alive. According to Rodrigo, who heard the account from a household staff member who later disappeared, Darian was drugged, then placed in his car. The family security chief drove the vehicle to the ravine, staged the crash, and ensured the damage was severe enough to make detailed examination difficult. The medical examiner who signed off on the death certificate owes his career to Ortiz donations to the medical center, Rodrigo explained. The police chief's daughter received a full scholarship from the Ortiz Foundation last year. Every system that should provide accountability is compromised. What haunted Talia most was learning about the family meeting that followed Darian's death. Rodrigo had been present as the extended family was informed of the tragic accident. Behind closed doors, Corbin addressed the inner circle differently. He called it necessary pruning, Rodrigo recalled, disgust evident in his voice. He actually said, sometimes we must cut away even beloved branches to preserve a tree. They toasted to family preservation while my cousin's body wasn't even cold. The Ortiz philosophy placed family legacy above individual lives. Their bloodline, reputation, and financial empire couldn't be threatened, not even by their own heir. In their warped worldview, eliminating Darian was not murder, but a sacrifice for the greater good of the Ortiz name. They've convinced themselves it was mercy, Rodrigo said. That living disgraced or imprisoned would have been worse for Darian than death. That's how they sleep at night, by believing they protected him from shame while protecting themselves from exposure. Talia left that meeting with a recording device hidden in her jacket, capturing every damning word from Rodrigo's confession. The conspiracy was now laid bare, but proof that would stand up in court remained elusive. The next step would require allies with the power to stand against the Ortiz influence. 3 months after Darian's death, Talia noticed a woman in an unmarked car parked outside her apartment. Rather than calling the police, whose allegiance she now questioned, Talia approached directly, prepared to confront another Ortiz surveillance operative. Detective Marisol Cruz, the woman said, showing her badge. Homicide Division. I've been reviewing certain cases independently. Yours caught my attention. Unlike Officer Jensen, Detective Cruz had built her career exposing corruption. Recently transferred from a larger department, she hadn't yet been folded into the town's intricate web of favors and threats. The crash scene photos don't match standard accident patterns, Cruz explained in her apartment, away from potential listening devices. But questioning the narrative got me nowhere except warnings to respect the family's privacy during their grieving. They formed an unlikely alliance, the pregnant teenager and the veteran detective, both outsiders determined to pierce the protective shield around the Ortiz family. Over the following weeks, they constructed a methodical case. Talia provided Darian's journal and USB drive contents. Detective Cruz contributed forensic observations that contradicted the official accident report, impact angles that suggested the car was stationary before falling, toxicology inconsistencies, missing dashcam footage from police vehicles first on scene. Their breakthrough came from an unexpected source: banking records. The detective had secured a warrant based on tangential financial irregularities, providing legal access to months of transactions. Hidden amid legitimate transfers was a payment to a security consultant the night of Darian's death, followed by a coded message exchange between Corbin Ortiz and the family attorney. The procedure is complete. No complications. Ensure full containment. The sacrifice must be complete. All branches secured. Legacy protected. When confronted with this evidence, Rodrigo provided the final verification. He agreed to meet one last time, bringing a family heirloom, a signet ring that contained a micro SD card. Darian gave me this before everything happened, he explained. Said if anything happened to him, I should wait 6 months, then find someone trustworthy. It's all here. Recordings of conversations, copies of transfers to shell companies, photos of meetings with people whose trials mysteriously collapsed. The evidence revealed something far beyond a family eliminating a wayward son. The Ortiz empire had systematically corrupted local governance for generations, buying influence, threatening opponents, and occasionally removing obstacles permanently. Darian's murder wasn't an isolated incident, but part of an established pattern. 3 business rivals suffered fatal accidents in the past decade, Detective Cruz noted, reviewing the files. 2 journalists investigating Ortiz donations to the mayor's campaign disappeared while hiking. A judge who initially ruled against them in a land dispute changed his decision after his daughter received an unexpected scholarship. The web of corruption extended beyond the family to encompass public officials, law enforcement, and community leaders, all compromised through carefully calibrated combinations of bribes, blackmail, and intimidation. With the evidence secured in multiple locations, they were ready to move against one of the most powerful families in the state, knowing that dismantling such a deeply entrenched system would require more than just truth. It would demand courage from an entire community long accustomed to looking away. Strategic release of the evidence proved crucial. Detective Cruz knew that simply filing reports through official channels would likely trigger the same protective mechanisms that had shielded the Ortiz family for decades. Instead, they executed a coordinated campaign that left no room for cover-ups. Copies of key documents were simultaneously delivered to the state attorney general's office, 3 major newspapers, and a respected documentary filmmaker who had previously exposed similar corruption cases. The evidence landed on Sunday morning when the Ortiz family gathered for their traditional brunch, a calculated move that prevented them from immediately activating their influence network. By evening, the explosive headline dominated every news outlet. Banking dynasty linked to heir's death. Evidence suggests family murdered son over pregnancy, financial crimes. The community's initial shock quickly transformed into outrage. People who had long whispered about Ortiz's influence now spoke openly about personal experiences. The zoning request mysteriously denied after refusing a partnership. The scholarship withdrawn when questions were raised about foundation spending. Each story validated the next, creating an avalanche of testimony. When power becomes concentrated in one family for generations, we normalize corruption until it becomes invisible, noted one editorial. The Ortiz case reveals not just one family's crimes, but our collective failure to question their authority. The state attorney general appointed a special prosecutor with no ties to the region. County-level law enforcement was recused entirely, replaced by state investigators who methodically gathered additional evidence, including security footage from properties surrounding the Ortiz estate that contradicted the official timeline of Darian's accident. Within weeks, arrest warrants were issued for Corbin and Isadora Ortiz, their head of security, the family attorney, and 3 public officials implicated in the cover-up. The family's assets were frozen pending investigation, their charitable foundation placed under independent administration. In a particularly damning development, the medical examiner who had certified Darian's cause of death committed suicide, leaving behind a confession detailing how he had falsified reports for the family over many years. The courthouse steps became a battlefield of competing narratives. The Ortiz legal team portrayed Darian as troubled and self-destructive, claiming the family had merely tried to protect him from himself. But these assertions crumbled against the weight of documented evidence and testimony from previously silent witnesses now brave enough to come forward. 6 months after her investigation began, with her pregnancy now visible to all, Talia visited the lakeside gazebo where she and Darian had shared their dreams. The weatherwood still held their carved initials, now accompanied by small offerings left by community members, candles, flowers, notes of apology for remaining silent for so long. She sat on the bench they had claimed as theirs, fingers tracing the rough heart they had carved together. "We're having a girl," she whispered to the empty space beside her. "She'll know the truth about you. Not what they did, but who you really were. How brave you were to stand against them." The sunset painted the lake golden, just as it had the night he first told her he loved her. In that moment, justice and grief intertwined, neither diminishing the other, but creating something new, a determination that their daughter would inherit a community finally freed from the shadow of corruption. 2 years after Darian's death, Talia Reyes stood before a packed auditorium at the community college, her daughter Maya sleeping peacefully in a carrier beside her. The young woman who once hid in shadows now commanded attention as she addressed the crowd gathered for the launch of her memoir. "Blood doesn't always protect you. Fear keeps us isolated," she told the audience. The Ortiz family maintained power not through strength, but by convincing everyone they were alone in their suspicions. Once we started speaking together, their influence collapsed like a house of cards. The book became required reading in ethics courses at several universities. Its unflinching examination of how wealth corrupts systems designed to protect citizens resonated far beyond one town's experience. The resulting foundation Talia established provided legal support to others challenging powerful families and corporations that operated above the law. For Maya, growing up would include knowing her father through more than just tragedy. Talia created a memory box filled with photos, letters, and stories of Darian's courage, ensuring her daughter inherited his determination to stand for truth regardless of consequences. "My daughter will never know her father," Talia wrote in the memoir's conclusion, "but she will know that her very existence changed a community. She is living proof that speaking truth, however dangerous, creates ripples that eventually become waves." If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that one voice can shatter decades of silence. Family violence and control thrive in secrecy, but collapse when exposed to light. Remember, those with the most power often demand the most loyalty while deserving it least. No family legacy is worth preserving through murder. No wealth justifies sacrificing justice. When we choose truth over comfortable lies, we reclaim power from those who abuse it.